When I heard the thunder, I could feel the rain. It's the same to me, just different name.
Hi, my name is Tao and welcome back to my channel for those who have subscribed. And if you are new or you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so if you enjoy my content. That would really help me out. Thank you. So today we're going to elaborate further on Scorpio in 2025, dealing with the month of April or even leading into May, also with the full moon in Libra and what that kind of all means. Now, previously I uploaded a video called Scorpio in 2025 and I vaguely or made a very general brief description of what 2025 meant. And 2025 in numerology is the year to let go of tying up loose ends and ending a 9-year cycle. So ending this chapter. So things that we've kind of held on to that no longer serves us or are bad for us, where we should be focusing and using our energy to let go of these things so we don't bring it into the next 9-year cycle. So I mentioned that April is a month to, make decisions and to lay the foundation of things that you want to kind of stick. Because April, is Aries, it's the ram, it's action, it's energy, it's God of War, it likes to do things, it's career driven, right? There's no forethought. Like a ram, it will just ram things and it will just do things. Now, this is ideal to, if you need a push to start projects, right? However, in the year of letting go, if we take the energy of this year and the energy of action of April, this can be a little bit messy. So for me personally, my compulsions, my impulsivity, my vices or my addictions kind of got ramped up. It's like my brain is I'm already compulsive and obsessive and impulsive, right? But I had that kind of I understand the ups and downs, the roller coaster that it usually does. I understand that chaos because I'm used to it. However, in the month of April, it's like it's ramped up. Usually I don't have, I have no patience. I'll just act on impulse, act on instinct, act on my emotions, and my brain's checked out, right? Usually that happens, but it's like it was steady before. Now it was just like I'm fast forward. So it's a bit of a nuisance and it's a bit frustrating. And when I talk about these behaviors and activities, it's seen negatively. And I know that it is. And, there's this stigma attached to it and this shame attached to it, this regret. And then you kind of upset yourself that, you're in that position when you should know better, but you can't control it. I'm not justifying my bad decisions this month, but I felt like it was needed for me to just make this kind of clear. And, the first step for growth is always to become aware of what the situation is. And when we're aware, it's in our consciousness, so we know it's in our mind about it. And when it's in our mind, we can, consciously keep working at trying to change the behavior that no longer serves us, right? With this full moon, this Libra full moon, usually full moons, especially Libra is about beauty, about relationships, it's about balance. So things of Libra nature, so whether it be trying to balance out your head and heart or internal versus external. So Libra tends to only show half of themselves usually, and there's part of them that kind of reject or repress or never let anyone see, maybe not even themselves, but it's to become complete with that, to balance it out. So this balance can also come out with letting go of people like toxic people, or perhaps it's letting go of whatever control that you have over yourself before and now accepting all of you, or it could just be reaffirming your boundaries and rules and where you stand in existing relationship, or cutting them off completely. Now, how does that even work, especially in the month of April? Now, I mentioned that, my emotions are ramped up, so I'm even a little bit more chaotic than usual, and I've done some dumb things this month that I regret, and there is shame attached to it. I'm not completely ashamed of it, but I'm angry at myself for it, because I can't control it. My Scorpio in me wants to control it. But I understand, right? So this is the month where we kind of focus. If there's someone in your life that you no longer want, if there's activities that, are really doing damage to your life, or behaviors that really going to have like negative consequences, and you know this, and you're going to get yourself in a pickle, this is the time to make the decision to stop it. We need to balance that out, go full circle, and then let go this year, remember. Now let's focus and kind of zoom into letting go of like a narcissist, or you're in a toxic relationship and you need to break free of that, or you're in a trauma bond and there's a loop thing that's happening, or a cycle that's happening, and for whatever reason, mentally that you shouldn't stay because it's kind of abusive and it's doing you no good and it's unrequited. It's just horrible. Like, you're not treated right. It's not a good relationship and you know this, but you can't, for whatever reason, walk away. Let's focus on that. So why does this happen? So let's just clearly explain why this happens first. And I need you to really, if you're going through this or you're in a situation like this, I really need you to listen to this part. I need you to hear my words because I need you to be aware. Now, it's all fun and dandy if we like learn new things, but we only kind of take it in and absorb it as like knowledge. Sorry about the noise in the background. The pipes in this house is like really loud and someone's using water, so it's like rattling. So if you hear a noise in the background, my apologies. So let's kind of explain why we can't walk away, why we're obsessed, why we're addicted, because it is an addiction, right? It's a love addiction. However, whatever you want to label it, it's an addiction, it's a compulsion, and you can't control it or you can't walk away, right? Now, when it comes to addictions and obsessions and compulsion and impulsivity, I'm no stranger to all of that. I'm no stranger to vices and addictions. But I'm a Scorpio sun, Scorpio rising, and a Pisces moon. I am no stranger to it, right? And let's explain why. And earlier this year, I was lucky enough to get tickets to see Dr. Gabor Mate. He's like a physician from Vancouver, Canada, who specializes in like palliative care, and he deals with a lot of people that are highly addicted with trauma, with childhood trauma, and he wrote a book. The event was about the myth of normal, which essentially, in summary, he's trying to explain to us that we need to be more kinder to ourselves because we get sick physically, and if we can't just treat the physical ailments, we have to treat the psychological, which is intertwined and connected. I was hoping that I'll walk away from that with him explaining or giving me actual practical tools and skills to be able to walk away on how to fix the psychological, but unfortunately didn't. But here we are. Let's talk about addictions first and why we had this problem. And it's not just about love addiction, it's any type of addiction. And there's many types of addictions. There's obviously substance, alcohol, gambling, which are typical ones that we know. There's shopping addiction, there's gaming, there's love addiction, there's sex, porn, working, social media. There's a whole bunch of addictions, right?
Medical doctor, I work in Vancouver, Canada. It's a myth that drugs are addictive. Drugs are not by themselves addictive because most people who try most drugs never become addicted. So the question is, why are some people vulnerable to be addicted? Just like food is not addictive, but to some people it is. Shopping is not addictive, but to some people it is. Television is not addictive, but to some people it is. So the question is, why the susceptibility? If you want to understand addiction, you can't look at what's wrong with the addiction. You have to look at what's right about it. In other words, what is the person getting from the addiction? What are they getting that otherwise they don't have? And what addicts get are relief from pain. What they get is a sense of peace, a sense of control, a sense of calmness, very, very temporarily. And the question is, why are these qualities missing from their lives? What happened to them? These are all painkillers. One way or another, they all soothe pain. And that's what the real question in addiction is, not why the addiction, but why the pain. The addiction was all about looking for oblivion, looking for forgetting. He said the contortions that we go through just not to be ourselves for a few hours. I can tell you about 2 experiences with mice. You take a little mouse and you put food in his mouth and he'll eat it and enjoy it and swallow it. But if you put the food down a few inches away from his nose, he will not move to eat it. He will actually starve to death rather than eat. Why? Because genetically, they knocked out the receptors for a chemical in the brain called dopamine. Dopamine is the incentive motivation chemical. Dopamine flows whenever we're motivated, excited, vital, vibrant, curious about something, when we're seeking food or a sexual partner. Without the dopamine, we have no motivation. Now, what do you think the addict gets? When the addict shoots cocaine, the addict shoots crystal meth, or almost any drug, they get a hit of dopamine in their brain. And the question is, what happened to their brains in the first place? Infant mice, if they're separated from the mothers, will not cry for their mothers. Now, what would that mean in the wild? It means that they would die, because only the mother protects the child's life and nurtures the child. And why? Because genetically, they knocked out the receptors, the chemical binding sites in the brain for endorphins. And endorphins are our indigenous morphine-like substances. Endorphins are our own natural painkillers. And what morphine or what endorphins also do, they make possible the experience of love. They make possible the experience of attachment to the parent and the parent's attachment to the child. So these little mice without endorphin receptors in their brains will actually not call for their mothers. In other words, the addiction to these drugs, and of course the heroin and the morphine, what they do is they act on the endorphin system. That's why they work. And so the question is, what happens to people that they need these chemicals from the outside? Well, what happens to them is when they're abused as children, those circuits don't develop. When you don't have love and connection in your life, when you're very, very young, then those important brain circuits just don't develop properly. And under conditions of abuse, things just don't develop properly, and their brains then are susceptible when they do the drugs. Now they feel normal, now they feel pain relief, now they feel love. There are many, many ways to fill this emptiness. And for each person, there's a different way of feeling the emptiness. But the emptiness always goes back to what we didn't get when we were very small. What we didn't get when we were very small. And then we look at the drug addict, and we say to the drug addict, how can you possibly do this to yourself? How can you possibly inject this terrible substance into your body that may kill you? But look at what we're doing to the earth. We're injecting all kinds of things into the atmosphere and the oceans and the environment that is killing us, that's killing the earth. Now, which addiction is greater? The addiction to oil or to consumerism? Which causes the greater harm? And yet we judge the drug addict because we actually see that they're just like us, and we don't like that. So we say, you're different from us. You're worse than we are.
So when you're a Scorpio and you grew up in a dysfunctional family and your parents weren't there consistently to make you feel or show you what safety is, which means that they needed to consistently console you every time that you were scared or terrified or in fear. So as I was saying, so if we, had these, traumatic events that we experienced as a very young child that we weren't regulated, right? We weren't emotionally regulated, and we weren't taught on the world around us. We weren't parented the way that we ideally would have liked to be. And because of that, trauma affects the development of a child's brain. So the prefrontal cortex is fully developed usually at 25 years of age. And when I say that the child's brain continues to develop up into the, let's say early 30s, that's what I'm talking about, the prefrontal cortex. And that's where emotional regulation exists, social behavior, cognitive control, ability to do things, just development of that, right? So it's an important thing that we need. It helps us regulate our behavior. So our dopamine system is kind of like not developed properly, right? So we don't produce normally the dopamine like other people do. We have a faulty system, you could say. And dopamine is what we need. That's the hormone that makes us feel joy, motivates us, makes us feel good. And dopamine plays a crucial role in cognitive control within the prefrontal cortex. So it influences things like, your memory, your working memory. So in the moment, that's why I can't math. Attention, decision making. This is why we become impulsive. It's decision making, etc. So dopamine dysfunction is prevalent, you could say. It's something that we experience. So what that means is we kind of like depressed. We have this kind of void because we don't have, enough dopamine to feel like happy. And we do things in the world out there externally that gives us dopamine hits. And that's a whole bunch of things, like all those behaviors and activities that I mentioned that we can become addicted to, like all that. So let me just mention it again. So not just, obviously, drugs, alcohol, etc. gives you a larger boost of dopamine, a larger hit of it, right? That's why it's so appealing. But, you can be addicted to, like, exercising gives you dopamine. You can be addicted to exercising. What else is there? Gaming, online gaming, that's a thing too. Even working as a Scorpio, if you're in that phase of, like material success and wealth, etc., you can be addicted to working. So, when we do these things, and it can start, for me, it probably started with all my addictions and bad behaviors and activities when I was a young teenager. I would say about 14. And the thing is with these dopamine things that gives us dopamine hits, it's all temporary, right? So if we consistently, let's say we're a drug addict and we consistently do these drugs, eventually the amount of drugs that we're taking and we get used to that level of dopamine becomes our normal. So we don't get that boost of joy anymore. So we want more and other things and to do other things, right? When I think back, I never quite got rid of these addictions. I only replace it with something. And love sure is an addiction. But let's define love for a moment, because remember, we weren't regulated as a child, so we never learnt what safety is. And love in itself is meant to be someone that, a relationship that makes you feel safe, which is something that we never kind of experienced. And if anything, if we feel we have someone that shows us safety, we may not identify that as love or emotions, because there's no intense, extreme emotions, or whether it be good or bad. We've only learned intense emotions. So really good, like love, or even pain and hurt. Everything else in between, this grey area, this calmness in between, we can't really identify it. That's why we live in extremes. So when there is a potential person that we want to be with, that we meet, we may not feel anything for them because our emotions aren't, going chaotic, which we kind of expect it to be, because that's all we've ever known. We don't know how to identify this calmness as love because we've misdefined it in our head way long ago. So when this person, triggers an intense emotion in us, we then see that as love, because perhaps when we were young, only felt these intense, extreme emotions of one or the other, and not enough of safety. Like many years ago, like I was in the same situation. I was, in long-term relationships. I was in a 7-year relationship, and then I was in a 3.5 one. We were living together, and then a 5-year one. So I always had these long-term relationships, and I always walked away from them eventually because I was young and stupid. I didn't really understand, but I, kind of labeled it as that I wasn't happy, and I'd walk away, not knowing how I even define love, or not knowing anything about anything, right? So I kind of walk away, and then I remember the first time I had a friend at work, and he had like social anxiety disorder, and he was overly friendly. And I remember once I asked him, "Are you flirting with me or something? Do you like me or something?" Right? Because I was quite confrontational, and I had no emotions for this person. And he's like, no. Like, what? Like, kind of shocked because he's overly friendly because he has anxiety, right? And that did something to me. That's where my obsession began. And I had no feelings for him. I didn't like him. He wasn't my type. But I had an obsession with this unrequited love. This person that didn't want to be in a relationship with me. All the relationships I had in the past, I've never experienced this before, because all the past ones, they were very devoted to me, whereas this person just didn't want me. And it was the first time that kind of happened. And I don't know, it grew. This is where the obsession kind of grew. I went a bit crazy. Now, did I want to be with them? I don't know. I don't know if I was obsessed with the fact that they didn't want me, or the fact that, or actually wanted to be with them, because they're not my usual. I don't think I had emotions like that, and it makes me question, but I just couldn't walk away. I was so limerent. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what limerence is. So limerence is like a psychological state characterized by an intense, involuntary infatuation or obsession with another person, even if they don't reciprocate. The fact that they didn't want to be with me plays a big role. So I had this obsession begin, and it was delusional, absolutely delusional, because it was like I had an ideal in my head, so far away from what reality was, and I was obsessed with the fact that he didn't want to be with me. We were always together for like 3 years. I pretty much spent like a couple of days away from him, but I don't know whether it was triggering like my need for control and the fact that I couldn't control that situation. It made me even more obsessive. But anyway, so during that whole time, because we were listening to communication coaches, relationship coaches, to pretty much communicate better. I don't know what I was doing. I was trying to work out ways, or try to solve a problem that wasn't really there to make it work, because I wanted it so bad, obsessively and delusionally, that it's so silly when I think about it. Like, it consumed me. And the thing was, I was using this relationship, or not a relationship, but I was using my relationship with this person as like a drug, or like any other type of addiction, as an escape. When I was around him, I didn't think about everything else in my life, and like everything else was difficult. It was a very difficult time back then, and I was obliterating my life in all sorts of ways and not addressing it, not facing my problems. And I was avoiding and escaping with this really weird friendship that I had with this person. And we would listen to like relationship coaches and like cases that they have and their interviews, etc., with certain couples. And I remember later night we were listening to one, and there was a line where I can't remember who it was or which. Like, there was a playlist of all these audios that I had, and she was saying that as a child, especially from if you've experienced trauma as a child or dysfunctional childhoods, there was a significant parent or guardian that you yearned something for, whether you were neglected or whether you yearned for their love, but there's a significant parent, it could be either, that you yearn something that you never got from them. And because of that, you grow up to be the opposite of this significant parent. So you possess traits that are completely opposing what this parent is. So you become the opposite because you didn't like that, you become the opposite. But you unconsciously, and this is all unconscious, you're not aware that you're doing this, so it doesn't, come to mind instantly. You have to like ruminate and really reflect and think about it for it to come to your conscious awareness, right? So you then are unconsciously attracted to people who possesses the same traits as that specific parent that you yearn something from that you never got. So, you feel incomplete because you never got that love or whatever it was from that parent, and you unconsciously look for people and attract people that possess the same trait as that significant parent, because you're still unconsciously trying to get what you never got when you were young to feel complete. But you're not aware of this consciously. It's not in our mind. It's not in the forefront of our mind. We're not aware of it. It's an unconscious thing. And I remember we were both listening to it, and I was like, wait. I remember I jumped out of bed and I paused it, rewound, and I was just like, I need to hear that again so I can process what they just said. And I was just like, so there's a significant parent that I yearn something from, and I'm like, because it's not conscious. It's not something that will just pop in our mind that we know about. So you have to really think about it. And I was sitting there going, which parent would it be? Would it be my mum or my dad? And like, I really was confused by that question. I'm like, I'm not too sure. And then, I was thinking about the traits my parent has, and then I had this epiphany, and I was just like, oh my God, you're exactly like my mother. And then he had an epiphany, oh my God, you're like my father. And there was this awareness that we had in the moment. We're like, oh crap, how did we not know this? It seems like it would be so obvious that we would identify it, but we weren't, because it's unconscious, right? And it's funny when you think about it, right? Because when we were aware of this information, it was like, okay, now what? But because I realized that he was like my mother, but now what? You know, what do I do with this information? And I didn't have that answer back then. But now when I think about it, if you think about your upbringing, and your parent is meant to show you what love is, right? And perhaps your neglected childhood, perhaps maybe there was a bit of abuse, neglect, or even abandonment. You interpreted love as love, and as well as comes hand in hand with pain or hurt. Because you could be loved in one moment, and the next moment you could get abused by the same person. So there's inconsistent, teaching of what love is as opposed to the opposite. So we confuse love and pain as the one thing. We misdefined what love and safety is. We didn't see safety. We just know chaos, and it can be painful. You can tolerate a lot, and it may be some good moments. But what we're really yearning for when we're a child is that to not be rejected. We yearn for our survival. We need that parent's love in order for us to survive, right? And perhaps unconsciously, if we think about it, these toxic relationships that we get attracted to, or they get attracted to us, whether they're narcissists or they're avoidant people, maybe it's just avoidant personality, or any other type of mental health label, trauma bond, narcissist, manipulator, avoidant, whatever which one. This is why we can tolerate a lot, and perhaps they don't treat us great. Maybe we get love bombed, or maybe they're nice, because our tolerance levels for what we can accept in people is quite low. If we grew up in the families that we grew up in, it's quite low. The standard is quite low. So we tolerate quite a bit. And perhaps we kind of confuse clearly one and the other. So perhaps we kind of attract people because unconsciously deep down somewhere, we see it as sort of comfort because it's familiar. And maybe that obsession that we have, that addiction, is because we need that extreme, intense emotion that this person triggers in us, which was what we were shown when we were young, these chaotic emotions, these extreme emotions. There was no calmness, it was chaotic. I think the first thing here that I'm trying to sum up is that we need to identify this isn't love. When you experience abuse in a relationship, that is not love. It's just an attachment. It's an addiction that we have. It's because these extreme emotions that get triggered in us, it gives us dopamine. Whether it be good or bad, it gives us something. It makes us feel something, and we mistaken that feeling as passion, and we mistaken that, abuse and love, they're completely separate. That's what we experience as a child is not what love is. Love is meant to be safe and calm, consistent and secure. So if this person that we're addicted to does not give us that, it is just an addiction. Just like how our brain lights up in love is the same as someone that's on cocaine. The same parts of our brain lights up. It can't recognize one or the other. It's an addiction. So as per any addiction, it's not easy for us to walk away, right? Because we're so used to that. For me, it took me like 5 years, I think it was, to walk away from my obsession. And I never walked away. I kept telling myself, and this is how I justified it, was that I'm still learning something. If I'm still learning about myself, which I was, because I'm a Scorpio and I'm very introspective and reflective, and I'm learning just based on their life being different to mine, the comparison in that, I was learning a lot actually about myself. And that was my excuse for continuing with that toxic relationship that I had, because I was avoiding life responsibilities. I was avoiding everything and everyone, and obsessed with this delusion that in retrospect feels so stupid, Eventually it got to a point where, it took a long time, but it got to a point where I finally learned everything that I needed to learn from them, and I was ready to walk away. It was just like my emotions got to a standard where I'm not getting anything from it. Not even dopamine anymore. You're not exciting any emotions in me anymore. So it's time for me to leave because I'm not getting anything from it. And that took quite some time. Like, even this whole letting go thing in 2025 is a process. It took me 9 years or more, 10 years, to get to a point where I'm finally accepting it. Accepting, the whole idea of, finding myself again, being lost for 9 years and then finding myself again, or being ready to accept reality as it is, as opposed to finding alternative ways to deal with the issue. I'm just escaping and avoiding, and that's what it is. But just like any other addiction, we escape into that love, and we avoid responsibilities, and it affects us long term. In those 5 years, I did a lot of stupid things. I racked up a lot of debt. I remember I had a shopping addiction as well. I was living way over my means, and I had a large significant pay cut, and I just couldn't adjust. And I just continued with the lifestyle that I had, knowing, the shopping addiction was ridiculous as well. Like, I was buying things online, going to stores daily. I had things coming on a daily basis, and that was only like I'm not going to incriminate myself and admit to all the other kind of addictions that I had, but you can kind of gather if you're a Scorpio. And I'm on the extreme end of it. But so now that we're aware of it, it's in our conscious mind. Don't forget it, because we probably will, because working memory is difficult in the prefrontal cortex, and we're always trying to protect ourselves. So, if you can quickly identify that this person, you need to tell yourself, when you have conscious awareness, you have to be accountable for it now, because you can't pretend that you don't know it. So if it's in your mind and you know this and you've retained this information that I kind of explained, you need to tell yourself and try to convince yourself that that is not love. It's just an addiction. The addiction is unhealthy. It's going to have bad consequences. So you need to ask yourself, why are you still going back? And don't get me wrong, like, these addictive relationships, right? Like, you could be so adamant one day because, they've annoyed you to a certain point where you're like, I've had enough. And then they could, breadcrumb you, I think that's what they call it, or show some sort of niceness that you're not used to. It's like your parent that has never been nice to you, giving you a little bit of attention. And that little bit, it's like a fishing line, right? And it'll be, what's that phrase? Line, hook, sinker? Yeah, the phrase line, hook, and sinker. You're caught. And then the cycle repeats itself. And remember, our mind's checked out already. When we have these emotions, these chaos emotions that take over us, there is no reasoning, because we can't reason. We're going to act on these stupid emotions and not have the ability to be able to regulate it, so we know that it's a good thing or bad thing and there's consequences, etc. We're dumb in the moment because of it, right? And that's no fault of ours. It's just the way that we're hardwired due to the experiences that we've gone through. When you're aware of this information, you got to see what else you're getting out of that relationship that you have and you can't walk away from. What else is it if it's not just love? What else are you getting from it? Like myself, where I felt that they were teaching me things about myself just by being from a different culture. Once I got past that, it was easy for me to walk away. So figure out and identify what else is kind of keeping you there, because you've already identified that that's an attachment issue, it's an addiction, it's an impulsive thing that you have. What pulls them in besides that unconscious, impulsive compulsion to feel a yearning that you never got? It's time to let go. And if that doesn't work, if you can't let go of them, like, another way to look at it is find that significant parent. If they're still alive, change your perspective on that parent. If you can fix and grow and allow that, parent and child relationship to develop and grow as you as an adult, if you can manage to do that, that's something that also could change the situation and change your understanding and learning. So the noises of the pipes earlier, like, I tried to edit the audio, and I'm not good with technology, right? So I have an audio app, and there's this thing that called noise remover. So I clicked on it, and there's different types of noises, right? And I had to Google each type of noise to see what would remove that loud pipe noise. And funny enough, it's called an impulsive noise. The loud pipe noise is called an impulsive noise. So I ran, the audio through the noise remover, the impulsive noise remover, the first time like about 8 times, pretty much. And it's still there, so I couldn't remove it completely. But I thought it was kind of funny that it was called impulsive noise, since we're talking about impulsivity. Anywho, so moving out of April, going into May. May is Taurus month, right? Oh, you're a Scorpio. It's kind of difficult. I struggle a bit with Taurus, but Tauruses love to feel good. They love to indulge. So careful. Careful. You have conscious awareness. You have to be accountable for yourself now. Now that you know the information, you need to make yourself accountable and commit to it in order for you to let go. Anyway, good luck, guys.
I want you